At my birthday dinner, she raised a toast and said, "To my future divorce settlement." Everyone burst out laughing. I laughed too and said, "Funny you say that. I already transferred everything to my sister's name yesterday." The room went silent. The restaurant was loud, expensive, and filled with the kind of people who think charm is a substitute for a personality. It was my 40th birthday dinner, an event my wife Amelia had insisted on hosting. It wasn't a celebration of me, of course. It was a performance for her friends, a chance to show off the latest phase of her 5-year plan. I was just the main prop. We were at the end of the meal. The waiter had just set a ridiculously small, architecturally ambitious dessert in front of me with a single candle flickering on top. Amelia's best friend, a woman named Claire, who had the warm, empathetic eyes of a shark, tapped her champagne glass with a manicured nail. "A toast," she announced, "to the birthday boy." Amelia stood up, glass in hand, a beatific smile plastered on her face. She looked every bit the part of the adoring wife. She let the chatter die down, ensuring she had the full attention of the table. Her parents, her sister, and her 3 best friends, the inner circle of her life's board of directors. "To my wonderful husband," she began, her voice dripping with fake sincerity. "A man of simple tastes, but a generous heart." A few of her friends snickered. "And," she continued, her smile widening as she locked eyes with Claire, "to my future, the one we've all been working so hard on, to my future divorce settlement." The table erupted. Not just laughter, but a wave of triumphant, howling glee. Claire raised her glass and shouted, "Get that bag, girl!" They all burst out laughing again, a coven of hyenas celebrating a successful hunt. They thought it was the funniest, most audacious joke in the world, a public acknowledgement of the long-running con they were all in on. I didn't get angry. I didn't look hurt. I laughed too. A real, genuine laugh. It was the laugh of a man who had been patiently waiting for the punchline, and it was even better than he had imagined. I stood up, picked up my own champagne glass, and smiled at my wife. "That's hilarious, honey," I said, my voice carrying easily across the suddenly quiet table. "Funny you should say that." I took a sip of champagne, letting the moment hang in the air. I already transferred everything into an irrevocable trust in my sister's name yesterday, but happy birthday to me, I guess. The silence that fell over that table was the most beautiful sound I have ever heard. It was a dense, heavy, and deeply satisfying silence. The kind of silence that follows a massive, unexpected explosion. The laughing faces froze, the smiles melted away, replaced by masks of pure, uncomprehending horror. Amelia just stared at me, the color draining from her face, her glass trembling in her hand. They thought I was the mark. They had no idea I was the one running the sting operation. Let me be very clear. I am not a wimp. I am not a simp. I am a senior investigator for a major insurance company. I don't sit in an office. I work in the Special Investigations Unit, the department that handles high-value, complex fraud. My job is to look at a perfectly manicured life and find the lie holding it all together. I spend my days sifting through financial records, conducting surveillance, and interviewing people who have turned deception into an art form. I don't believe in coincidences. I believe in patterns. And for the last year, my own marriage had been my most fascinating case file. I met Amelia 4 years ago. She was working in art curation, a job that paid very little but offered a maximum of social prestige. She came from a family that had the appearance of wealth, but was, as I would later discover, a house of cards built on a mountain of debt. I was a different kind of project for her. I didn't come from money, but I had made my own. I was stable, successful, and to her, I suspect, deeply boring. I was not her dream, I was her financial safety net. I wasn't a fool. I saw the red flags from the beginning. The way she'd casually mention her friend's new vacation home, the way her needs always seemed to scale up perfectly with my latest bonus. But I was, for a time, a willing participant. I had spent a decade of my life in the cynical, dirty world of fraud investigation. Amelia, for all her flaws, was a departure from that. Our life together was simple. I thought, perhaps foolishly, that my stability could provide a foundation for something real. That she would eventually outgrow the shallow materialism of her upbringing. Our marriage was a calculated risk. I insisted on a prenuptial agreement that protected all my pre-existing assets. She had laughed it off, calling it an unromantic formality, but she signed it. For 3 years, I played the part of the devoted, slightly oblivious husband. I funded her lifestyle. I paid off her lingering student debt. I financed the down payment on the beautiful home that was now, legally, our marital property. I was investing in the partnership, waiting to see if it would ever pay a genuine dividend of loyalty and respect. The investigation into my own life began 3 months ago. It started with a single, anomalous data point. A credit card statement that showed a recurring monthly charge for a consulting service I'd never heard of. It was for $500, a small enough amount to fly under the radar. But my job has made me pathologically attentive to detail. I did some digging. The consulting service was run by a woman who billed herself as a lifestyle strategist. A quick search revealed that she was, in fact, a high-end divorce coach, a woman who specialized in helping wealthy women maximize their settlements. My wife was paying a divorce coach while married to me. That was the moment the professional in me took over. The husband was sidelined, and the investigator clocked in. I didn't confront her. You never alert the subject that they are under investigation. You just quietly start building your case. I treated my own life like a fraud claim. I began a full-scale forensic audit of my wife. I placed a keylogger on our home computer. I put a GPS tracker on the car I had bought for her. I used my professional resources to do a deep dive into her finances and the finances of her inner circle. What I found was a conspiracy. Amelia and her friends, led by the divorce coach-in-chief, Claire, had been planning this for over a year. Their group chat, which I now had full access to, was a treasure trove of evidence. It was a step-by-step playbook for how to fleece a husband. They discussed which assets were marital property. They strategized about how to provoke me into an affair to get an infidelity clause. They even had a timeline. The plan was to wait until our 4th anniversary, then file for divorce, take half the value of the house, and secure a generous alimony package. My birthday dinner was supposed to be a sort of pre-victory celebration, a final joke at the expense of the fool who was funding his own destruction. They had made a critical error. They had underestimated their opponent. They thought I was just a boring insurance guy. They had no idea my job was to hunt people exactly like them for a living. 2 days before my birthday dinner, I took action. My sister is a partner at a top law firm, specializing in asset protection. I spent an entire day in her office. We didn't just transfer everything to her name. That's amateur hour, and easily challenged in court. We executed a series of complex, legally airtight maneuvers. We created an irrevocable family trust, a legal fortress designed to be impenetrable in a divorce proceeding. We transferred all of my premarital assets, my investment portfolio, and the majority of my liquid cash into this trust. My sister was the trustee. Then we had the business I owned formally acquire the house, our primary marital asset, in exchange for a majority share in a new holding company, which was also owned by the trust. In the span of 8 hours, I had legally and permanently moved every significant asset I owned out of the reach of my wife and the state's divorce courts. The only thing left in our joint names was a checking account with a few $1,000s in it and a mountain of shared debt from her lavish spending. So when I sat at that dinner and she made her toast, I wasn't faking my laugh. It was the purest, most satisfying laugh of my life. I had spent 3 months investigating the biggest fraud case of my career, and I had just closed the file. Update 1. The scene at that restaurant after I dropped my little bombshell was a thing of beauty. It was like watching a movie in slow motion. The laughing faces froze, the champagne glasses stopped halfway to their lips, and then the panic set in. Amelia just stared at me, her mouth slightly open. Claire, the divorce coach, was the first to recover. She let out a sharp, nervous laugh. "That's not funny, Mark," she said. "You can't just do that." "Do what?" I asked, taking a calm sip of my water. "Protect my assets? Actually, I can, and I did. It was a very productive day yesterday." The party was over. The check was paid, by me, the final ironic twist, and the ride home was a masterclass in silent fury. Amelia didn't say a word. She just stared out the window, her mind no doubt racing, trying to figure out if I was bluffing. When we got back to the house, the mask of the sophisticated, composed woman fell away, and the greedy, terrified creature underneath emerged. "What did you do?" she hissed, the moment the door closed behind us. I took a piece of professional advice I often give my own clients, I said, unbuttoning my cuffs. When you suspect you are the target of a long-term premeditated fraud, you take immediate and decisive action to mitigate your losses. Fraud, she shrieked. I'm your wife. Are you? I asked. I walked over to the bookshelf, pulled out a thick, leather-bound binder, and dropped it on the coffee table. It was my case file. Because this file suggests you're a co-conspirator in a plot to defraud me of my assets upon the dissolution of our marriage. A marriage you have been actively planning to end for over a year. I opened the binder. The first page was a printout of the invoice from Claire's consulting service. The next few pages were color-coded charts showing the flow of money from my accounts to her lavish lifestyle. And then, the main event, 100 pages of printed, time-stamped messages from their group chat. I let her read for a few minutes. I watched her face turn from red with anger to ghostly white with fear as she saw her own words, her own plans, laid out in black and white. "Where did you get this?" she whispered. "I'm an investigator, Amelia," I said. "It's what I do. You were so busy planning the perfect crime, you never once stopped to consider that you were married to the perfect detective." The fight, the real one, went on for hours. She cried, she screamed, she denied. She blamed Claire. She blamed her friends. She blamed me. It was a textbook performance from a subject who knows they've been caught. The next morning, she was gone. She had packed a bag and gone to stay with her parents. Her lawyer called my lawyer, my sister, that afternoon. And that's when the second and most beautiful phase of the consequences began. My sister is a shark. She didn't just confirm that the assets were in an irrevocable trust. She went on the offensive. She informed Amelia's lawyer that we had a comprehensive file of evidence proving a conspiracy to commit fraud. She explained that if Amelia chose to contest the trust in a lengthy and expensive court battle, we would not only win, but we would also file a separate civil suit against her, her sister, and her friend Claire for the $65,000 they had stolen from me. Oh, did I forget to mention that? In my audit, I had also uncovered a little side hustle where Amelia and her sister were using our joint credit card to buy designer clothes, wear them once, and then return them, a pattern of behavior that constituted, you guessed it, a form of fraud. Amelia's lawyer, who was probably some local guy used to simple divorces, was completely out of his depth. He was facing a top-tier law firm with a mountain of evidence. He advised her to take a settlement. The terms I offered were brutal, and they were non-negotiable. She would agree to an uncontested divorce. She would walk away with zero claim to any of my assets, past, present, or future. The house would be sold, and after the mortgage was paid off, the remaining equity would be split. After I had deducted the $65,000 she had stolen, plus my legal fees, she would end up with next to nothing. While she was dealing with that legal nightmare, I moved on to her support network. It was time to deal with the coven. Update 2. My revenge against her friends wasn't about being loud. It was about being precise. It was about using the information I had gathered to dismantle the very foundations of their comfortable, arrogant lives. Claire, the divorce coach, was the first target. She was the architect of the whole plan. My investigation had revealed that she was not just giving bad advice, she was operating in a legally gray area. She wasn't a licensed lawyer, but she was providing specific legal and financial strategies to her clients for a fee. I compiled a detailed report, complete with testimonials I had found from other disgruntled former clients online, and sent it, anonymously, to the state's Bar Association and the Attorney General's office for investigation into the unauthorized practice of law. Her little consulting business is now the subject of a major state-level investigation. Her career is likely over. The other two friends in the hive were simpler. One of them, a woman named Becca, worked in public relations for a large, very family-friendly corporation. Her social media was a curated mess of her partying, her casual drug use, and her generally terrible life choices. I simply compiled a greatest hits of her public posts and sent it to her company's HR department with a note. As a shareholder, I am deeply concerned about the public behavior of your employees and the potential risk to your brand's image. She was fired for violating the company's morality clause within a week. The final friend, Jessica, was married to a man who was a partner at a rival insurance firm. A man I knew professionally. I simply arranged to have a coffee with him. I didn't show him the group chat. I just told him, man to man, that I had recently uncovered some deeply troubling information during my divorce proceedings that involved his wife. I told him I thought he had a right to know that his wife had been actively coaching my wife on how to commit marital fraud. Then, I gave him the name of a very good forensic accountant. I don't know what happened after that, but I saw him a few weeks later, and he was no longer wearing his wedding ring. In the span of a month, Amelia's entire support system had been systematically and surgically dismantled. The friends who had laughed at her joke were now unemployed, under investigation, or in the middle of their own messy divorces. They had all turned on each other, blaming Amelia for bringing a monster into their lives. She was completely, utterly alone. Final update: it has been 3 months since my birthday dinner. The divorce was finalized last week. As predicted, after the sale of the house and the deduction of the money she and her sister had stolen, Amelia walked away with less than $10,000. A pathetic severance package for 3 years of what she thought was a brilliant investment. She had to move back in with her parents. Her father, whose business was already struggling, had to take out a second mortgage to cover the legal fees from her divorce and the impending lawsuit from Uncle Ron against Megan. Oh yeah, that happened too. The entire family is on the verge of financial ruin, their reputation in their community destroyed. I got a call from her last week, from a blocked number. It was the call I had been waiting for. She was crying, of course. She said her life was over. She said she was sorry. She said she had been a fool. She asked if there was any way I could just help her. I let her finish. When she was done, there was a long silence. "I'm an investigator, Amelia," I finally said, my voice completely flat. "My job is to assess risk, and you, your family, your friends, you are the riskiest asset I have ever encountered. A normal person would just walk away. But I don't just walk away from a bad investment. I write it off, and I make sure it can never, ever be listed on the market again." I continued, "You thought you were playing a game. But this wasn't a game. This was a claim. You filed a fraudulent claim against my life, and I just spent the last 3 months doing my job. I investigated, I documented, and I denied the claim with extreme prejudice. The difference between you and the other criminals I deal with is that they usually have the sense to know when they've been caught." I hung up the phone and blocked the number. I'm sitting in my new apartment now. It's smaller, more minimalist. It's a place of order and logic. I sold the big Craftsman house. It had too many bad memories. My life is quiet now, and it is entirely my own. My revenge wasn't about a single moment of triumph. It was a slow, methodical, and comprehensive audit of a corrupt system. She and her friends thought they were smart. They thought they were players. But they were just amateurs, trying to run a simple con on a man who dismantles professional con artists for a living. They thought they could take me for everything I had. They just never realized that the most valuable thing I own is the one thing they could never understand: the absolute, unwavering certainty that in the end, the books always have to balance, and I am always the one who balances them.